Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of LA Live. Today, it's pretty exciting. We usually are here to talk about travel, and we'll do more of that today. But I'm joined by a co-host and a very good friend of a friend, actually. So, Nick, great to have you on LA Live today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
It's pretty fun, isn't it? It's probably a different topic than you're usually talking about.
Yeah, well, it's a topic that everyone loves talking about. Holidaying, a little bit of exercise while holidaying, but it's obviously my life's taken up by sport and has been for a long period of time, so it's great to be here. Let's talk about something different.
Awesome. So let's talk about when you retired from footy. What was the first trip you took post-retirement?
My first trip post-retirement, well, I've got a young child, so that was limiting, and the wife was pregnant with our second one. So what did we do last year? We did a couple of small trips. We went up to Central Coast, New South Wales.
Beautiful.
We made a road trip out of it. I actually drove the whole way, which was interesting. And then we went, my family's got a beach house down the coast, so we went down there for a week as well. So very, very quiet, considering over about the last decade, we always tried to get overseas.
Amazing. And favourite place in Australia?
Favourite place in Australia? Probably Hamilton Island or Port Douglas.
Yep. And going up to Port Douglas, I understand that you did do this with the newborn.
Yeah.
So how do you go travelling with a family? Because that was probably quite new.
Well, I was more worried about annoying other people and ruining other people's holidays.
Yep.
Firstly on the flight, but thankfully, I think our little man Jude was about 8 months at that stage at the end of the football season. He was an angel on the flight, so that was the first thing that we ticked off the list. But obviously the accommodation had to be accommodating to make sure that he had a separate room where he was able to sleep. Didn't ruin our night's sleep and our holidays, but it was fantastic. We had great accommodation. Obviously had to be back every 2 or 3 hours so he could have his naps, but we had a great time. And when you get away with the family, there's not much better. Yeah,
brilliant. Now let's talk about some of your most, I guess, memorable trips. And obviously there's been quite a few of these, right? So there's the trips to Utah for altitude training, and then there's the end of season trips, and they're pretty different.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Utah and what you thought of the US, and also what goes into such an enormous trip like that from an athlete's perspective.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate with football and through football to go on a lot of training camps. I actually went to London. This is for training specifically. London, South Africa, China, Colorado, and Utah. And we went to a few of them multiple times. Utah and Colorado in particular were amazing. Obviously the weather, it was snowing. We were able to use universities' training facilities, which are, if anyone's been to those sort of facilities or seen them on television, second to none, and it puts AFL and anything that we have in Australia to absolute shame.
Yeah, wow.
And they have bubbles that blow up with hot air so you can train on synthetic grass. They have heaters that warm up the ground if you're outside in case the ice comes on. But as an experience, fantastic. You know, you get to experience American sport, American life, the way they go about their lives, but also from a training perspective, unbelievable. And the altitude, as many people know, was really difficult. And that was the whole purpose of going. We lived there for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, then we'd come back and just try and simulate some of the things that we're doing over there.
Yeah, really cool. I actually I lived in San Francisco, and I still meet people who are often a little apprehensive to go to the US, amazingly. Tell us a little bit about your experience in the US.
Well, I've been, as I mentioned, 2 or 3 times for training. I've been there once for a football trip, and I've been there a couple of times for holidays, a couple of times with the wife and a couple of small groups of the footy boys over the years. So I've experienced America, and I love American sport and grew up loving particularly basketball, so I embraced that sort of part of it. But
who's your basketball team?
Oh, well, on Miami Heat.
Yeah, right.
So I was a big fan of theirs when they were going right. Now they've sort of dropped off the radar, so I'm changing teams. But Americans get a bad rap, let's be brutally honest. And when you're there and you're living their way, couldn't be any more accommodating.
Yeah,
and
great.
I remember stories being in New York in particular on the subway, and God knows where I was, and you're underground and you can't find your way down to Wall Street, and then I can't find my way back to, the park and all those sort of things. And they were so accommodating. I remember this one lady in particular literally sat in the seat next to me and got me to my destination. And I was with the wife and I was lost. Not great on the navigating, but literally took me. And I just thought to myself at that time, they're lovely people and they get a bad rap around the world. And we've all got friends that either live there. And they're all great stories. And most people, wherever you are good people. And there was just a couple of those examples that highlighted to me that they're fantastic and they love Australians. That was the other part. Love Australians. So that was always nice.
I agree. I had a really similar experience. I was in Chicago and I was literally holding up a Lonely Planet guide at the time. This is about 15 years ago. I'm standing there and I'm trying to figure out where to go, and a lady tapped me on the shoulder and said, can I help you get to your next destination? I said, yeah, absolutely. And she took the train with me.
Yeah.
Pretty extraordinary stuff. You don't experience
Would that ever happen in Australia?
Well, we're not that bad, but no, probably wouldn't, would it?
But with the Australian sense of humour, you'd probably send them the wrong way as well. It's probably half an hour. That's a joke.
And tell us a little bit about we're obviously at Luxury Escapes, as you know. We're about incredible hotels all over the world. What's your favourite hotel? Where have you stayed?
I've been fortunate to stay in some really nice ones. I can't remember all of them. I remember the location, and I'm pretty good at. I used to always take a photo of the hotel room, just so when I looked back in it in years to come, I could always remember where I was, how we got to it, and places like Venice, obviously over the canals and the water. I can still remember those ones, but the one that stood out to me, the one that I can remember off the top of my head, is Anatara in the Maldives.
Yeah, beautiful.
I was fortunate enough to come back on after a European honeymoon. We went there for a week on the way home, and that one obviously sticks in my mind for obvious reasons. Just a little bit similar to what we're looking in the screens behind us. Just
pretty good.
Never forget it.
And I want to know, and I struggle with this myself. So if you're on a long haul flight, and you land on the other side of the world. Now, I reckon you guys have probably had some good training in this regard, but how do you get over jet lag, or just tell us how you recover from a long flight, and presumably you've had to do that quite a bit.
Yeah, well, the hardest ones in regards to jet lag was when we're on a training camp, because you have to make every day count, and when you're there for 3 weeks, you're pretty much back to back with training commitments or recovery.
Yeah.
So I remember particularly when we went to Utah or Colorado, that it was bad luck. You got up the next morning, and then I think it actually helped in the long run because it only lasted 24 hours opposed to dragging out 2 or 3 days. On the flip side, I remember going on some holidays for leisure, and I'd pretend like I was going back to my room to have just a little power nap for 15 minutes. I'd stay there for 3 hours, and I knew well what I was doing, and I just pretend like I was just going back and have a little rest. But jet lag's tough, no matter how you go about it. The only recommendation I'd have if you're trying to reduce jet lag is fly first class.
Yeah,
that's
not a bad recommendation for those who can do it. I must admit, it's pretty interesting to hear you talk about Utah, and really, really great place to travel to, and quite exciting to announce to our listeners out there that Luxury Escapes will soon be launching a new vertical on our website focusing on ski and adventure holidays. So it's quite interesting. Have you been on any interesting holidays, ski or adventure-wise?
Well, where we stayed in Utah was Deer Park,
right.
And that's where the Winter Olympics were. I don't know how many years ago it was now, but a while ago. But that place was unbelievable, and the chalets and the accommodation was as good as I've ever stayed in. Accommodation-wise, to have the pathways heated as you walk from your hotel room to the lobby was...
The pathways are heated.
Literally heated. You could have worn your Ugg boots, you could have gone barefooted if you wanted, and then there was, half a metre of snow beside you, and that, just those little things just stick in your mind as something different and special that you obviously never forget.
That's awesome. All right, well, thank you for that. Now, just a reminder to the listeners out there and the viewers for that matter, if you've got any questions for Nick or myself or for our upcoming guest, Hazel, feel free to just jot those in the comments section of Facebook, and we'll absolutely announce those. And I am also delighted to announce that we'll be giving away a $100 gift voucher to Luxury Escapes, and so we'll be asking you some questions throughout the show today. But hey, it's my pleasure to bring on a colleague of mine, and big welcome to LA Live, Hazel.
Hi, thanks. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you
thanks,
too.
Blake.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, I reckon that's a pretty good question for you, actually. What's the first thing when you get off the plane, given you're very healthy, you're into your exercise, so what do you do to try and recover from a long flight?
Well, I do quite a lot of long flights since I'm from the UK originally, so there's plenty of 24-hour flights in my schedule, but I think my best tip is to try and sleep on the plane. I know it's really a lot easier said than done for a lot of people. I always set my clock to the time of where I'm travelling to, whether it's on the way there or on the way back, so it helps me kind of get into that where I'm supposed to be, and you just switch off as much as you can on the plane and forget what time is where you've come from. So
are we allowed to promote sleeping tablets?
I'm not sure about that.
That also helps, but I do agree with what you're saying, that when you're leaving, from example, from Australia to the UK, if you're trying to stay in Melbourne time for too long, it compounds and it makes it even worse on the other side. If you can get into that next time zone as quickly as possible. It is difficult though when it's daytime in Australia and you're trying to make sure you have a sleep so you wake up roughly on the UK time, but that's what it's about. It's all part of it.
I really like going for a run as soon as I get off the plane, and it's a good way to see a new place as well. So it doesn't have to be that long, and you feel pretty ordinary getting off a plane. So to go for a run and just shake all the cobwebs out, just a couple of Ks, and you actually see the little neighbourhood in which you're difficult if you're landing at midnight, of course. Yeah. But if you can then wake up the next day and go for a run that very first morning, it's a really nice thing to do to shake off the cobwebs.
That's good advice. Have you ever done that?
Not a run, but yeah, walk a lot. Okay. Because, yeah, you get off a flight, the last thing I want to do is go for a run, to be honest with you. But it depends where you're going, because if you go into a nice resort where there's a pool, I often swim. But you're right, any kind of gentle physical activity that's going to get you just in a better sleeping pattern, I think. So as long as you go to bed at a normal time when you get there and you sleep through the night, it's my best advice for not copping it the next day.
Right. Now we've got, I think it's 4 Nick Dal Santo questions that we're going to ask the audience today. So, Nick, do you want to just give the viewers the first question there, if you can see that?
Question 1 is, how many Brownlow votes did I get in 2007?
It's a good question.
It is a good question because I actually didn't know the answer. Right, that's how good that question is.
This will be interesting.
So it's the first person to respond correctly with how many Brownlow votes did Nick get in 2007. Now, Hazel, I understand you've just got back from Nepal. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I did a 15-day trek to Everest Base Camp in Nepal.
Wow.
So bucket list trip. It was really exciting.
And tell us a little bit about it. What was so good? Why did you choose Everest Base Camp?
Oh, it's one of those destinations that's kind of been on my list for a while, and it actually came up as one of our luxury escapes, and it prompted me to have that moment of if not now, when.
Yep.
So I jumped on it, and I was fully expecting to go by myself, and then I put it out there to a bunch of my friends, and being such a good package and everything like that, we actually got a crew of 12 of us to go.
Wow.
So everyone knew someone, or there was siblings. 2 of my brothers came with me, so yeah, we just decided, everyone was, approaching 30s, 40s, and decided use your body while it works and get out there and do something a little bit more adventurous.
Did you have to prepare for the trek? Because obviously in recent weeks there has been some deaths, so it is pretty serious. What was your preparation?
Yeah, well, you mentioned altitude before, and this is pretty much the extreme of altitude before you get to some serious mountaineering kind of skill. So it's a fairly hectic trek. In that regard, we did go up to like 5,500 metres at one stage, and the air gets down to about 40% oxygen there. So they do recommend some general cardio and being moderately active and fit and healthy, so you can do that. But it's very difficult to simulate that kind of environment without actually going up to that height. So,
but is base camp itself, I obviously know Everest is a big challenge, and that's where people can lose their lives. But is base camp itself a pretty safe destination to visit to?
Oh, it's a safe destination to visit to, and the guides that you actually go with are there to make sure that it's safe. The trek itself is very moderate in that it's trails through a national park.
Great.
So the only real danger would be slips and falls, which can happen anywhere, I guess. And also the altitude risk is there for everyone. Okay. There was actually a Sherpa that was airlifted off while I was there as well. So the altitude side of things is not something that can be controlled.
Yep.
But as long as you take the relevant precautions, you listen to your guide will tell you if you're exhibiting symptoms that require attention, and they'll send you down appropriately. But no, definitely an experience I'd recommend.
And the 12 that you went with, did they all return in the same manner?
Safe and sound?
10 of us actually made it to base camp. My brother unfortunately had some symptoms of altitude, and they're so proactive about it there that they decided that it would be better for him to descend. So my other brother just accompanied him down the mountain, but they made it to 4,400 metres, which is still a lot higher than anywhere in Australia. So
now, this has been a very candid representation of Nepal and your base camp trip. And so for anyone who does want a really interesting adventure, we've got a Nepal offer live on Luxury Escapes now. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah. It's actually really, it's in the same region, it's Nepal. So the Himalayas stretch for miles and miles and miles. So you can actually have a variety of experiences over in Nepal. It has moderate trekking, but some more cultural experiences in the package that we've got at the moment. So it's not as dramatic, I suppose, as a base camp trek. That might be a little bit for the more adventurous, but the one that's actually on the site at the moment is really accessible and a really good introduction. The Nepalese people are beautiful, so if you haven't been, they really are hospitable, and the culture is gorgeous. So I'd definitely go back.
Fantastic. So that's a 14-day excursion or adventure trip to Nepal, and that's $999 available on luxuryescapes.com. Now, Nick, we've got a question for you. It's jumping back to our earlier chat just about being a parent and heading off to Port Douglas. And the question is from Jalil James. So thanks, Jalil. Nick, do you have any tips for new parents who want to fly or travel with their kids?
Well, my first bit of advice, if you can handball the kids off to the in-laws or your parents, that's your first priority. Second of all, as I mentioned, in regards to flying, just cross your fingers. We were prepared to hold our young son at that stage. Yep. He was a fantastic flyer, and he's been fortunate enough to have a few trips since, and we just got lucky with a kid that was able to sleep. So that was really fortunate from our end. But in regards to the accommodation, we just wanted to make sure that there was enough space, and that's for a personal reason as well, because you don't want to feel like you're cluttered up. We wanted to make sure that our young son had his own room where he would, felt comfortable and was able to sleep in a similar situation to back home, but also facilities. And both in Port Douglas, Palm Cove, we've been to a few other little places with the kids. As long as they had a swimming pool, they were very happy, and as long as they were able to eat, and the food was decent, which they were at every place we went to, you normally got a pretty happy family. So that's about as good as advice that I can give.
Fantastic. Now it's probably time again for Nick Trivia. And question number 2. So do you want to address the audience?
Ready to go. Oh, I do know the answer to this one, thankfully. What team did I play against in my first AFL match?
Good question. I don't know the answer. So if someone out there does, it's question number 2 of Nick Trivia, and it's to win a $100 voucher to use on luxuryescapes.com. So we're just going to have a quick chat about some destinations that Luxury Escapes is selling right now. And we'll talk a little bit about these because they're some of my favourites. The first one we'll talk about is Byron Bay. So, Hazel, have you been to Byron Bay?
I have been to Byron Bay.
Tell us what you like about Byron Bay.
Byron Bay for me is it's the pace. You just slow down there. So given that we're kind of talking about doing something good for yourself, a bit of wellness, a bit of a retreat, Byron Bay just as a destination itself is really slow, very just relaxed. Even if you just go there and take a walk, you walk slower. I don't know, have you been?
I was going to say, and I agree with you, the bit I love about Byron Bay is you don't have to go for a week or a month. You can go for a couple of days because the pace is so calm. You can go for a long weekend and you come back and go, wow, I feel rejuvenated, I feel refreshed. I'm prepared to go back to work and actually be happy again. The food in Byron Bay is brilliant. They've got a couple of really nice pubs and bars where if you want to socialise and have a beer, they've got those things as well. But the accommodation, the beach is perfect. There's not much more you could ask for.
So let's talk about a perfect day in Byron Bay. I'll start. So I'm going to cheat and start. I'm going to go a lighthouse walk. So from the main beach up to the lighthouse, I'm going to give that a 2-hour turnaround time. Where do we go after that?
Well, I won't name a particular place, but I'd say a long lunch.
Long lunch.
And that doesn't mean that we're drinking alcohol all day. It just means we're sitting out in the sun, getting a little bit of colour while you relax. And once again, the pace of it means you're in no rush. You can have a slow meal, you can have a couple of coffees over that period of time, and you just feel refreshed. That's what I love about it. A long lunch for me.
Well, I'll give you a place then. So it's Harvest for a long lunch,
Harvest,
which is up in the hinterland, and that's where you can have just an extraordinary long lunch. What do you think, Hazel?
Well, I can't believe neither of you have actually mentioned surfing, since it's pretty much a surfing capital of Australia. I'm English, so I've only taken up surfing since I've lived here, but I would have probably started my day in the water. Or at least, maybe have that nap after lunch and then hit the water. But it might be a bit full at that stage. So
I love it. And then we're going for a beautiful night's rest at Victoria's in Ewingsdale, which is up in the hinterland and available on luxuryescapes.com. And it's a 3-night package. And it's available for $799. So anyone interested in Byron Bay, certainly sounds like one of our favourites. It's a good place to get to, and certainly we've got a fantastic offer for you. What about Sri Lanka? Have either of you been to Sri Lanka?
I haven't been to Sri Lanka.
I've never been, but it's on my list. Yeah, firmly on the list.
How many do you have on your bucket list?
There's a fair few. I'm ticking them off one by one.
And what goes into a bucket list destination, do you reckon? Is Sri Lanka on there?
Sri Lanka's on there for, funnily enough, wellness reasons and relaxation, just because, again, it's one of those cultures where it is all about looking after yourself. So I had a similar experience in Nepal, and Sri Lanka's on, as I say, on the list for the same reason, that there's massages and they just want you to relax and eat well, and the service there is just impeccable. So, and aside from that, just having the different landscape and the different kind of animals around, that you can experience something very unique.
Apparently, it's got as good a safaris as almost anywhere in the world, which I didn't know about. So
I didn't know that.
That's pretty cool.
Really? Okay.
And beautiful beaches. Speaking of which, where do you reckon is the best beach you've seen worldwide?
For surfing?
For lazing about, surfing, whatever you like.
The Maldives is hard to beat. North Shore, Hawaii is a special. I actually proposed to my wife in North Shore, so that's got a little bit of sentimental value. But
down on one knee?
I was sitting down.
Yep, fair enough.
Topless.
Topless.
Inboard shorts.
Well, it's probably pretty hot.
Yeah, well, we'd been sunbaking, we were relaxing, we did a trip around the island.
Yep.
But that obviously means a little bit.
I like it. And now, I should say that Sri Lanka is becoming a bit of a favourite for us here at Luxuryscape. So we've got another beautiful package to Sri Lanka, and it's a particular wellness resort. So if anyone's into the topic that we're talking about today, which is keeping fit and healthy while you're on holidays, gallivanting around the world and experiencing some gorgeous places, we've also got Sri Lanka live now on Luxuryscapes. And are we up for question number 3 for Nick Trivia? It's about that time. This is an interesting one, Nick.
This is an interesting one. I'll give you a tip. I didn't finish this course. I deferred and haven't gone back yet. But which Victorian university did I study at?
Which Victorian university did you study at?
It's going to be hard to find. That's going to be a tough one.
There's quite a few universities. Now, what did you study, or does that give it away?
No, I was doing sports administration.
Makes sense.
And coaching/management.
Okay.
So I was doing a few, but all in the sporting industry.
Fantastic. Okay. And now, Hazel, we must ask, given that Nick's sitting in the middle of us, you've just taken up AFL Women's, is that correct?
That's right, yep. I've been playing for probably all of 2 months, so
Good on you.
not quite ready to give you a run for your money yet.
That's
But
okay. You'd be doing better than I am right now. How are you feeling? You enjoying it?
yeah, really enjoying it. It's nice to be part of, an Australian cultural sport. I've played sport, I'm very sporty, but I wanted to join a community team, and that's something that has really been pushed on me since we started. I'm playing with another colleague of mine, Ellie, and got a game this Saturday if you want to come and watch. But yeah, we're getting stuck in, so we're just in our first few games
Can
of
I
the
ask
season.
why football in particular? What attracted you to that?
Well, I've come from a basketball background, and obviously moving to Australia, there's the whole just wanting to get amongst it, and it's the national sport, and I used to play rugby as well, so it's a good combination of all the sports that I've played before.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know what I love? I love when you go overseas and you'll see an Australian either throwing a rugby ball or kicking a football, and it's a pretty welcoming sight, particularly if you live overseas, but also if you're travelling overseas, you can just go and say hello and know that there's someone who's a friendly neighbour, so to speak.
That's true. And then the other obvious one is the voice. So, and we wouldn't normally do it in Australia where you walk up to a complete stranger and want to have a kick of the footy with them, but it has happened. I was actually in Brooklyn, I think we were, not on a footy trip, it was with a group of the footy boys, and we actually bumped into some guys that were just having a random kick in a park.
In the Brooklyn Park?
Yeah, and we were on our way home, after sightseeing for the day, and had a quick kick with them. They had no idea who we were, but that wasn't the point. We just sort of had a quick kick and went on our way.
That's pretty cool, I must say. For anyone going to New York, we did have a New York episode a couple of weeks ago, but the Brooklyn Park is, I would argue, as good as Central Park. It's absolutely stunning, that park over in Brooklyn.
Yeah, it's a little bit quieter as well, which is probably nice. And they're all nice parks. I mean, they're in an area where there's so much concrete that any bit of free space you get, a little bit of greenery, is very nice and welcoming.
All right, now we're going to go for a quick fire couple of questions here. Now, Hazel, favourite holiday of all time?
Maui, Hawaii.
Not bad. Nick?
Probably my honeymoon.
That was Maldives?
That was, I know it's a bit corny. I apologise for
and
that.
ahs
But it's just where we
big
went.
audience that we've got here.
It was where we went. We
Yeah.
did 3 places through Italy, then went across to France, and then came back.
Okay,
via
good.
Maldives.
And I think we may have said this before, but what's on your next most immediate bucket list trip?
Actually, I would like to dive with the whale sharks in WA.
Wow.
That's next
That
on
is
my list.
That is
so
good on
I'm
the
hoping
list.
that comes up on our new adventure vertical, so I can make
fantastic.
the most of that.
You heard it here. Hazel wants to go to, is that Ningaloo Reef?
Yeah, that's right.
Right,
that's
in
right.
in WA, so that'll be exciting. And Nick?
I won't be doing it in the near future, but the Monaco Grand Prix.
Wow.
For the 2 reasons.
Sounds
I'm
good.
not a massive F1 fan, but I think it's pretty special, and I'd love to go to Monaco.
Fantastic. Okay, now this is an interesting question. I do like it, and I've got a good answer to this. But your favourite movie for a long haul flight?
Well, I'm pretty used to long haul flights now, so I'll make my way through the new releases pretty quickly. But if I'm on a really long haul flight, I might kind of tuck into a trilogy.
Yep.
So I like the classics, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings, and that way you've just got a lot of movie to get through.
I like when Indiana Jones goes to Petra, in Temple of Doom, or one of those Indian films. And what about you, Nick?
Yeah, I'm similar to Hazel. I like trilogies. The Hangover.
Yep. Not
1, 2, and 3. And 3's my actual favourite.
Three's good.
But there's a reason for it. You know those movies where you could just watch over and over and you
Yeah.
can just sit there and enjoy it?
Yep.
I have that with The Hangover. I never get bored of it. I'm happy just to sit there and we'll just push replay again. Those 3 in particular.
Well, I wish it was a trilogy, but my answer's not a trilogy. Mine's Passenger 57 with Wesley Snipes.
Oh, Wesley Snipes.
So it
Really?
could go
Nice.
Passenger 58 and 59.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't a good enough movie in the first place. And just quickly, no doubt you both are going to pack your running shoes and probably some get up. So what are your tips for packing when you've only got so much, particularly these days, and you want to get everything in there? So any tips for packing you can share, Hazel, for the viewers out there?
Yeah, well, for anyone who wants to stay active on holiday, it's actually really easy to pack for because everything's pretty small. And if you're going to be doing something active and getting hot and sweaty, it doesn't matter if you wear it more than once.
Yep.
Plus, on a plane, you tend to want to be comfortable. So I tend to wear my active wear on the plane and my sneakers and that sort of thing. So the only other thing you throw in is maybe some togs and a pair of goggles to swim some laps. But keep it simple, keep it small.
I don't often wear active wear on flights, but my advice is, and this is in all seriousness, I'm prepared to do washing. So you obviously go to places, and particularly if you're travelling a little bit between hot and cold
Great
places,
suggestion, yeah.
I'm prepared to do washing. So obviously bring a pair of sneakers to be able to run in,
Yeah.
maybe a couple of pairs of socks that you can rotate so they don't get too smelly. But I'm happy to wash my shorts, my undergarments and my training top every day. So I'm ready to go the next day. And often, not anymore because I don't play anymore, but when I was travelling, I always had to do something. So my advice and tip was I get up and do it straight away. I don't care how I feel.
always.
If I'm a little bit dusty from the night before, if I've had a couple of beers or had a poor night's sleep or I'm jet lagged, I get up and go and get it done as soon as I can. Wash your clothes, let them dry for the day and then go out and explore a new city.
Yeah, fantastic tips. One of the things I discovered really recently was one of those quite elastic bands that you can actually use as a form of weight resistance. And that thing takes up next to nothing in your suitcase. And I took it across to Singapore for a recent business trip, and you're able to do some basic level weights with no weight in your luggage. So that's pretty nifty.
Do you do that, Hazel?
Yeah, I do actually. I tend to pack like a skipping rope as well.
Really?
So if I'm going to somewhere remote or somewhere that doesn't have a gym, which to be honest, most resorts do have gyms and facilities and at least a pool or a beach you can run along even without trainers. So you're not usually short of ways to exercise, but something that I do also, I have a bunch of apps on my phone. There's some really good people out there that specialise in that sort of in-hotel workouts that you can do. If you are training to stay fit or training for something in particular, you can just stay active in your hotel room and using your hand luggage as weights and things like that. So there's a lot of apps out there that can help you.
Just imagine you with 2 big hand luggage just going like this in the room. Not bad. All right, now it's question number 4 of Nick Trivia.
Yes.
What have we got, Nick?
In what year did I play my 100th consecutive game?
100th consecutive
100
game.
consecutive.
Right, okay. So that's question number 4, and we're looking for the first person to get all of those right. And we also have a couple of quick questions from our viewers, so thank you very much. Peter asks, I believe, we'll direct this to both Hazel and Nick, I think. So Peter asks, who's your pick to win the football this year? Which is definitely not travel related, but we're going to answer that anyway. Hazel, any ideas?
I'm still learning the game,
Right.
and honestly, I genuinely watched a documentary last night on explaining AFL.
Really?
Because let's face
good
it,
luck.
I am English and it's not my national sport. There's a lot to learn. I only know the basics, so I probably couldn't name all the teams. I couldn't tell you who would
Who do
be
you
my
vote for?
pick. That's a controversial question because I moved in with Aussies when I first moved here, and they told me I had to barrack for someone, and now I'm friends with someone else who's like, you have to barrack for them. So I think I have to politely decline and say I'm undecided at this stage.
Yes.
Apart from the team I play for, of course.
Well worded. Well, my opinion on who's going to win the footy this year is in the premiership. It's as open as it's ever been. Obviously, the Western Bulldogs came from very low in the finals to make their way up to win it last year. I'm going to go with the GWS Giants. I still think if everybody's playing their best at that particular time of the year, they are the best team.
Now, I should say to the audience out there, we are sport agnostic. So we might be based here in Melbourne HQ, and we've just talked a little bit about football. But hey, if you want to talk about who's going to win the Rugby League Grand Final, feel free to post to our commentary, and we'll talk about that next week too. All right, now, that is a great question from Neil Williams. I really like this. I'm not entirely sure I can answer it personally. But do either of you have a favourite travel pillow? Could be a teddy bear, could be
You go
your own.
first,
No,
and then I'll...
Only invested in one in the last year or so, actually, and I got a memory foam one. And the reason being because I've tried other ones in the past, with those little polystyrene balls and they're just rubbish. But with the planes getting bigger and there's more space, you find you do need something that has a bit of support. So I find the memory foam one, definitely for long haul flights on big planes, is my favourite.
I don't have a pillow, but I'm very meticulous with pillows when I'm at home, which is unusual because then when I go away, I'm prepared to deal with anything.
Yep.
Okay.
But I have played with players in the past, and over the last 10 or 15 years, it took the same pillow on every trip, no matter where they went.
Really?
Perth, they was that.
Yeah.
And it's like a
particular-
bed-sized pillow?
Yeah,
or is it
on
not?
it, yeah. So obviously
Right.
a football bag, a travel bag's a decent size. Like if you were going overseas, and the top layer would be their pillow.
Right.
But it never really fazed me. The thing I like about hotels often is there's about 4 or 5 options, so it's just about ruffling them up and finding which one suits you for the night.
I must admit, that is one of the most incredible perks that a hotel can give you, the pillow menu.
Options.
Literally go through the menu and look through and call up for the best one. All right, now this has been pretty cool. So I've been joined here at LA Live by Hazel, who's a member of the Luxury Escapes team. He's absolutely into health and wellness. Just come back from Nepal and had a wonderful time there. And been joined by Nick. So thank you, Nick, for joining us as a special guest host.
Thank you very much for having me. Happy to talk about holidays and destinations forever.
It's pretty good fun, isn't it? Now, of course, if you've got any questions for Nick or Hazel, please post those. We'll pass them on and we'll get those answered for you. As always, if you've got any questions about Luxury Escapes in general, post those. We'll get in touch at 1300 88 9900 and we're happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you very much for being on LA Live today, and thanks for talking about health and wellness, guys.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.